Welcome to the Nightly 5 podcast with Ben O'Shea.
On today's show, a passenger on that tragic Singapore Airlines flight speaks out. Plus, Australia's richest Powerball winner reveals how he'll spend the money. Pope Francis is granting sainthood to an influencer. I'm not joking. And we'll preview Dreamtime at the G and predict an Origin selection shock. Then I'll leave you today with a review of J-Lo's new sci-fi epic for Netflix. Spoiler alert, it's a stinker. In our top story today, tragedy on a Singapore Airlines flight.
A British man has died and dozens more have been injured in a terrifying mid-air emergency. The Singapore Airlines flight, with many Australians on board, hit severe turbulence and was forced to make an emergency landing in Bangkok.
I think we were all left shocked this week after hearing the news about Singapore Airlines flight SQ321, which experienced extreme turbulence that resulted in the death of one passenger and injury to many more. The Boeing plane was 10 hours into its journey to Singapore from London when it hit the sudden extreme turbulence over Myanmar. 56 Australians were on board and a 73-year-old British man died. It's believed he suffered a heart attack during the ordeal. About 40 people were injured and are still receiving medical treatment. Well, now we're hearing details from the passengers who lived through that terrifying ordeal. Passengers like Keith Davis, who was left incredibly battered and bruised, but said his wife, Kerry Jordan, had suffered severe spinal trauma. The Adelaide man said his wife had been flung into the overhead lockers and landed in the aisle, where she remained for the rest of the flight, unable to move as chaos erupted around her. After the flight made a forced landing in Bangkok, she had emergency surgery as soon as they were admitted to a local hospital, and it remains that she has no sensation from her waist down. The head of the Bangkok hospital said 22 passengers have suffered spinal cord injuries and about 6 have brain and skull injuries. Despite the terrifying ordeal, Keith Davis praised authorities and said the Thai hospital had given them exemplary care and support, and the calm response from some passengers on board the flight was also worthy of note.
We begin with breaking news, and an Adelaide man is $150 million richer after claiming last night's record-breaking Powerball jackpot.
Trigger warning, if you have a hard time being happy for other people who win the lottery, block your ears for the next 2 minutes. An Adelaide man has come forward to claim Thursday's $150 million Powerball jackpot, becoming Australia's biggest lottery winner in the process. The middle-aged man contacted lottery officials this morning after not sleeping Thursday night because he just kept checking the ticket. And in a fascinating data point in the age-old debate of what one would do if they won the lotto, this bloke went to work. He actually had 2 tickets in last night's draw. He checked the first one and it came up with nothing, and then he scanned the second one and it said $150 million. He said he's never screamed so loud or jumped so high. But despite the monumental win, the man is currently at work and has no plans to change that. He said that he knows it sounds crazy, but he's going to continue working. As for what he'll do with the money, he said he'll buy a house, wants to travel the world, and he's got family and friends he wants to help. But he admitted that right now he couldn't really wrap his head around how big the prize is. What a great problem to have. In case you were curious, celebrity mathematician Adam Spencer said the odds of winning the Powerball draw were 1 in 134 million.
Carlo Acutis will be declared a saint. Pope Francis has recognized a miracle attributed to the intercession of this Italian teen.
You've heard of fashion influencers, you've heard of food influencers, and you've probably even heard of doggy influencers. But have you ever heard of God's influencer? That's a title being bestowed posthumously on Carlo Acutis, who died of leukemia at age 15 in 2006 after he rose to prominence using computer skills to spread the Catholic faith. Well, he's about to get an even more impressive title, that of saint. Carlo is set to become the Catholic Church's first millennial saint after Pope Francis attributed a second miracle to the boy. Born in London in 1991, Acutis grew up in Milan with his Italian parents, where he learned to code while at primary school and later used his skills to create websites for Catholic organisations. His big hit was creating a website that documented thousands of alleged miracles that took place around the world. Acutis was first set on the path to sainthood in 2020 after Pope Francis approved a miracle attributed attributed to him, which involved a 7-year-old Brazilian boy who claimed to have recovered from a rare pancreatic disorder after coming into contact with one of Acutus's t-shirts. A priest had also prayed to Acutus on the child's behalf. In a statement overnight, the Vatican said Pope Francis had approved a second miracle attributed to Acutus, meeting the benchmark for canonization. The miracle in question, according to the Vatican, involved the healing of Valeria Valverde, a 21-year-old woman from Costa Rica who almost died after incurring a severe head injury in a bicycle accident while studying in Florence in 2022. Following emergency surgery during which her skull was opened to relieve pressure on the brain, the woman's family was told that the situation was critical and that she may not survive. 6 days after the accident, the woman's mother went on a pilgrimage to the tomb of Blessed Carlo Acutis in Assisi, where she prayed that her daughter would recover, and she left a written note. That same day, apparently, Valeria started to breathe on her own and by the following day was able to move her arms and to speak again. She was discharged from intensive care 10 days after her mum's pilgrimage, following tests which showed the hemorrhage in her brain had completely disappeared. Valeria made a full recovery, needing only a week of physiotherapy after her discharge from hospital. For those keeping score at home, Pope Francis has canonised 912 people during his tenure, and before Acutus qualified for sainthood, the most recent birth date of these new saints was 1926.
There's absolutely no one around Matt Burton after he took that inside pass, and Canterbury have jagged another one.
Matt Burton had a night out in the Bulldogs' trouncing of the Dragons last night, but did the Canterbury 5'8" also play himself into Origin consideration? Here to help us answer that one is sports editor at The Nightly, Ben McClellan. So, Ben, what do you reckon? Is Burton a bit of a smoky for Origin selection?
Yeah, look, I mean, the process of mulling who should be playing in the team is almost as interesting as the games itself with Origin. And this year is the speculation is running wild. So as we know, obviously the halves, Nathan Cleary's out. Jerome Luai got axed from Origin last year, so he's not the incumbent. Nico Hines looks like he's probably a pretty strong contender to secure that number 7 jersey, and then so that leaves the question mark, okay, who plays alongside him? If, Cleary had been playing, then there was a pretty strong argument for Luai because of the Penrith connection. Cody Walker was looking like he was sort of top of the pops, but then he's not playing this weekend because he's got a calf issue. And then Matty Burton's come out of left field, leading the Bulldogs to a stellar 44-12 rout of George, bagged a double himself. So his name is definitely in contention because he's a very strong ball runner, which is what you probably want to see in Origin out of your 5'8", when you want sort of a mastermind, kicking maestro from your halfback. Which is hopefully what they'll get out of Nico. So really, it's anyone's guess. But he definitely didn't do his, did his chances, didn't hurt his chances, by that performance last night.
Yeah, I think you make a pretty good point. I think with Nico Hines looking pretty certain of filling that number 7 jersey, I think Burton could be a good option, just adding that extra weapon there in the back line. And what about for Queensland? What are the rumours that you're hearing ahead of the selection at the end of this round in the NRL?
Munster out, we all know that. It looks like Tom Dearden, is probably 80% to 90% odds on to take that spot. I mean, Ezra Mam for the Broncos has obviously been playing some great football. So he's, his name is probably, definitely up there. But Dearden's filled in before in that role. The Cowboys, are in shocking form, but that generally doesn't influence Origin decisions too strongly. So I would be surprised if he doesn't get the nod. And with the Queensland camp, there's also talk, which we had in the Nightly in last night's edition, about Corey Jensen being a bit of a bolter to come into the forward pack. So, Queensland's forwards pack, you'll be happy to hear, Benny, is pretty decimated. So you guys aren't going to have too much go forward. Tino's out, Flegger's out. So there's talk that Corey Jensen could be a bit of a smoky dark horse from the Broncos to come into that Origin team. So it's going to be really fascinating what Michael Maguire decides to do with the New South Wales team, and then particularly Billy Slater who's obviously done a great job with Queensland. You know, whether he decides to go for some left field options, which Queensland don't generally do, or whether he'll sort of stick with the tried and tested players. And just in terms of that halves conversation with the Blues, I did neglect to mention Mitchell Moses. Now, Mitchell hasn't, played in a long time because he's been injured. He's not playing this weekend, so it'll be unbelievable if Michael Maguire picked Mitchell Moses to play New South Wales without having played, a game for 6 weeks because of injury. It's really just a gamble, you don't want to take because he doesn't have any match fitness under his belt. And what would have happened if he started and was, immediately injured? They pretty well plan the origin in terms of interchanges and positions, and sort of replacing one of your halves is just not something they really want to have to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're pretty spot on there with Mitch Moses. Might be in the frame for game 2, or maybe game 3, which will be a dead rubber because Queensland will already have a couple of W's. And now let's talk the other footy.
And the Bombers find some Dreamtime magic.
That was the Bombers last year, winning the Dreamtime at the G. Very, very special game on the AFL calendar every year, and it happens this weekend. You've run the ruler over it. How are you feeling about it?
Oh, look, it's the Dons to lose, really. They're second on the ladder. They're in unbelievable form. Brad Scott, in between his not so veiled criticism of the AFL tribunal system has got Essendon really humming. So they're in really strong form. Richmond are in a pretty bad spot. They are the only team to have beaten Sydney this year, so that's pretty incredible when you think about it now, given what the Swans did again last night, pipping the Dogs. But yeah, Richmond has been consumed by the Dustin Martin saga. Whether he's still whether he's still committed to the team or whether he's looking to greener pastures. But yeah, obviously it's a fantastic celebration of Indigenous culture, and there'll be several Indigenous players giving it their all on Saturday night. It is a fantastic game. Anything can happen. Anyone can lift for the occasion, but I do think Essendon will get the job done. The other big match of the round, Benny, is Geelong and GWS. Now, this is pretty interesting because, Geelong were undefeated up until a few weeks ago. GWS were hot to trot. They've both lost their last couple of games. Now they come in against each other in what really is sort of a must-win game for both of them to get their seasons back on track. If the game's down in Geelong, Geelong has got Tom Hawkins and Jeremy Cameron back. And the Giants' guns, Toby Green, Sam Taylor, and Tom Green really, really need to find some form, or the GWS season is, going to spiral out of control.
Yeah, I think this game is absolutely massive, as you point out, and it will, shape the second half of the season for both of these clubs, depending on the result. Going to be fascinating to watch it. We'll be glued, and then we'll talk to you about it on Monday. Sports editor at The Nightly, Ben McClellan, thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Atlas. Time to wake up.
I'm awake.
Agent Atlas Shepard has spent years of her life hunting the artificial intelligence known as Harlan. Originally engineered to advance humanity, he instead nearly ended it.
A sci-fi epic starring the ageless Jennifer Lopez, Simu Liu, and the excellent Sterling K. Brown. What could go wrong? Turns out, pretty much everything. Here to tell us more about this new Netflix movie is culture editor at The Nightly, Wenley Ma. Okay, Wenley, I get the feeling this is 2 hours of your life you want back.
I do want that back. I really, really do. And it probably didn't help that I watched this at 11 p.m. So I was quite anxious and impatient to get to sleep. And I just felt like this was a roadblock to some slumber. But honestly, it's just such a terrible, terrible movie. And I knew it was terrible because within a few minutes, less than 10 minutes, I was getting really annoyed at small things. You know how, if you meet a colleague or a friend's partner and you find them annoying, then all of a sudden everything they do becomes this big deal.
I know it well.
Why is this man wearing a red shirt? No men should be wearing a red shirt. But if Timothée Chalamet wears a red shirt on a red carpet, then I go, oh, he's so fashion forward.
Now, I know exactly what you mean. It's because it's all about, for me, like suspending your disbelief, that you're watching a movie and any little detail that doesn't ring true. I find it so hard to get past those in film and TV as well. It's just like those little decisions, I think, can add up to be big problems. Okay, so let's rewind a little bit. What is this movie about?
So this is Jennifer Lopez playing a woman who, when she was a child, her mother was this very genius AI scientist. And her mother had created this new sort of AI who was supposed to be a little more advanced than all the AI that was already around. And that was a world a little bit set further in our future where AI was incorporated and embedded into, transport, home, domestic stuff. Like it was part of everyday life. And so this new advanced form of AI somehow got past his security protocols, reprogrammed every form of AI in the world, and what a surprise, they turned on humans and a war started, millions of humans were killed. Somehow the humans managed to gain an advantage on this AI, which is named Harlan, and Harlan fled Earth. Fast forward 28 years later, the 10-year-old child is now Jennifer Lopez. And yes, if you are doing the maths, that means J-Lo is playing a 38-year-old character. I mean, she is ageless, but is she 38 years old ageless? I'm not sure. So this is what I mean. These little things start to annoy me because I'm like, this whole movie sucks. So every little thing annoys me. And so the movie is essentially just her being extremely distrustful of AI, but the government forces want to go and hunt down Harlan because they want his CPU. So she is on this mission, which is led by Sterling K. Brown, who is an incredible actor, who is basically not in the film. I don't know why they bothered casting him. And J-Lo her character has to kind of become trustful of this AI system named Smith, because Smith runs this mechanical suit that is necessary for her survival on this hostile planet and against Harlan. I mean, it's a pretty simple story. Like, it's not doing anything new. It's entirely reliant on existing tropes. She has to learn to trust. She has to learn to survive. She just basically does a lot of grunting, sweating, crying, and lots of I will get through this. And that's the movie.
Oh, wow.
It's not a spoiler because I think as soon as you start, or even before you start the movie, you know what the movie is.
Yeah, it does sound like that indeed. And it comes from the director of the wonderful, wonderful film Cats and Dogs, The Revenge of Kitty Galore. So maybe it's not such a huge surprise. Brad Payton also did San Andreas and Rampage. So he's got a vibe.
He has a vibe. I've seen both Rampage and San Andreas, and over the years, I have morphed those two movies into one movie in my head. I just kept thinking, yeah, it's that Dwayne Johnson movie where he fights a big ape during an earthquake. Actually, there's two separate movies. Who knew?
What a movie that would be. Sounds like better than Atlas. And so let's sum it up here. What are you going to score Atlas out of 5?
It's a 1.5 star out of
Ouch.
5. And I wrote in my review, on the plus column, the composition, the score is not that bad. And it's pretty good by virtue of the fact that everything else is really terrible.
Yeah, well, you can read Wenley's full review at thenightly.com.au. Culture editor at The Nightly, Wenley Ma. Thanks for joining me on The Nightly 5.
Thank you.
And that's today's show. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join me on Monday on The Nightly 5.
The Nightly 5 podcast is brought to you by 7 West Media. For all these stories and more, head to thenightly.com.au, helping you get in front of tomorrow.